Good evening, welcome into the first fan forum here on the channel. How are we all doing this evening? Hope everyone is doing very, very well. And welcome into the fan forum. Hope everyone is doing well. We've got some great guests coming on tonight. We're going to be chatting with them on their thoughts on the Six Nations and on their team. And also there's an opportunity for you guys to get involved and to join live on the channel. There's a link in the chat now. So if you want to jump on and get in the studio, you can do. And we'll try and get as many of you in as possible tonight. So do make sure to get involved and get your thoughts in as always. And we're going to chat about the Six Nations as a whole, but we are going to focus quite a lot on the last round. We're going to get the guys' thoughts on their teams and we're going to just see what they make of it. I'm wearing an Italian top. I am Welsh, of course, and we are going to get into that. So we got Ben from Rock and Roll Rugby who's going to help cover Wales with me. We've got Stephen Somerville from Stephen Somerville Irish Rugby who's going to cover Ireland. We got Dan McFarlane from Stuck in the Scrum who's going to cover Scotland. I've got some pre-recorded stuff for Italy as well. So we've got a lot to get through tonight. So what we're going to do first, we're going to crack on. We're going to start with Wales. I'm going to welcome my good friend Ben into the stream. Ben from Rock and Roll Rugby. Ben, how you doing, man? You recovered yet?
Absolutely not, mate. I'm still in a state of shock. I think I'm absolutely bewildered, baffled. I haven't got a clue where to start, mate. To be honest.
Yeah, I know it was a difficult watch yesterday. You were at the stadium. What was the feeling at the stadium throughout the game? Because the way I would describe it from watching at home was flat. Is that the word you would use?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that came across was that there was a real mix in the stadium yesterday. There was that mixture of people who were your rugby fans, your diehard rugby fans, but then you had a real mix of like other supporters as well. Like there were a lot of young families there yesterday as well. And I just think the entire crowd were just waiting for something to happen. I think even after we'd scored our first two tries, there didn't really seem to be that much of an excitement. You know, it was, on the one hand, it was a game that I think people were expecting us to win comfortably, but then on the other hand, it wasn't the greatest games to watch as well. So it was a real strange one, really. But yeah, flat, 100%. I've never known it to be as flat as it was yesterday.
Yeah, it's an odd one, and there's a lot to unpack on this one. First of all, I think what we both have to say is credit has to go 100% to Italy. They were fantastic on the day. They deserved to win, and they were the better team. Absolutely, they had a clear game plan, which I'm sure is a big word we're going to use for the next 10 minutes or so to describe this Wales team. So congratulations to them. I did chat to an Italian earlier today, and I'll play a couple of the recordings from that chat later on. But in the aftermath of this game and looking back at this game in particular, what is your assessment of the performance? And feel free to go in if you want, because don't worry, I will be.
I'll just echo before I go into anything else. I'll echo. I really was. Obviously, I didn't want it to come against us, but I'm really glad that they've got that monkey off the back now. Italy, they've picked up that win. 36-game losing streak is now over. And for some of those players in that Italian squad, it's their first taste of victory in the Six Nations. So it's something they can certainly build on from there. From a Welsh perspective, I'm very, very concerned because not only does it seem now that we're at a point where the performances are not coming, there's nobody really putting their hands up and saying, you know, that they're going to be the ones to take this team forward. And especially, we talked so much through the Six Nations. We talked through the autumn as well. In that, during this Six Nations, Wales's game plan needed to evolve. We really needed to see us start to establish an identity. And I think 5 games in now, I think we're even further behind than we were. And people keep saying, well, yeah, Wales won the championship in 2021. Let's be frankly honest. That championship, when you look at individual games as a breakdown, we did not play well in that Six Nations whatsoever. We had a lot of luck on our side. We had some moments of brilliance from some individual players. But ultimately, as a team, we still haven't clicked and we still haven't gelled. And the biggest concern for me is, there doesn't seem to be any shimmer of light. There doesn't seem to be any sort of glimmer as, oh, there is this to look forward to. There's this opportunity. We've got absolutely nothing at the moment. And for somebody listening now, they might think that sounds a bit drastic. I genuinely struggle to see one positive to come out of this Six Nations, other than the fact that come the time where we had Faletau come back, we had Navidi come back. Christ, we even had to drag Alan Wyn-Jones onto the pitch on Saturday just to try and give us that bit of front foot ball and just to try and give us that leadership on the pitch to win the game. And we still couldn't get past an Italy side that haven't won a game in 36 games in the Six Nations. So you take from that what you will. Again, not taken away from that Italian performance. But we outscored them 3-1. We should have comfortably won that game, especially the way that we were going into that last 10 minutes. But yet again, and I'm really glad that Dan Biggar said it in his post-match interview yesterday. I caught up with that today. And he said that there's a lot of players in this squad and that's the last time they'll play for Wales. And I think that is the drastic changes we need to make now, is that we've been building, these players have been selected. We've almost gone into like sort of a Gatland style where we're picking on prior experiences and prior players that have performed at this level. I don't think in any way, shape or form some of those players yesterday should have been on that pitch. I'm going to, and I would never in this instance do this. Adam Beard, for me, I do not understand what he offers in a Welsh jersey whatsoever. We don't play a style of game that suits him. We need carriers, and that's why players like Will Rowlands are starting to become more effective, because we just don't hit the game line. Yesterday, Adam Beard, he's carrying up right into contact, losing the ball on the floor because his present is poor. But again, that could just be a one-off game. Gareth Davis, for me, slowed the game down completely, offered absolutely nothing in attack, and really killed our attack. I've got to say, Halaholo was not utilised in the way that he is best. Every time I saw him carry the ball, and I've watched the highlights back, and I might have missed this, but he's been used as a crash ball centre. Has Pivac not watched him play?
Isn't he?
Yeah.
He's the Welsh Bundyaki, isn't he? That's what he is at the minute.
But that's not the player that he is. And if Pivac actually used him to the strengths that he has, we could actually get on the outside of defences and start to find holes. I think ultimately we went through this Six Nations. We picked 5 different teams across the 5 different games. We didn't allow any continuity. Yes, there were some selection choices that had to be made due to injuries, but there was no continuity. There was no understanding of where we're coming from and what we do next. Everything that went wrong in the previous game just seemed to be swept under the carpet, and we tried again. We didn't seem to build on what had gone wrong last time. And I'm at that point now where, you know, we were saying, we've been chatting about it beforehand. Yes, there are bigger problems going on in the Welsh game, and the best analogy I could use is that the Welsh game has slowly been rotting from the inside, and now people are starting to be concerned because it started showing on the outside. We've gone that far. We've had 2 regions that have been absolutely battered out in South Africa this weekend. Our men's national team lost against Italy. Our under-20s side lost against Italy. Our under-18s lost against England. We've got nothing going forward at the minute. The performance director for Wales must be absolutely bricking it for the next couple of months. We've got a summer tour coming up to South Africa, and I genuinely don't understand where we go from here. For me, drastic changes have got to come in, and if we're going to see any benefit of it, Pivac said yesterday, and this was the thing that really wound me up yesterday. He said the Welsh fans won't be this disappointed when we do well at the World Cup.
Get to a quarter final were his words, actually. When we get to a quarter final, it's like, mate, we got to semi-finals recently. What is that? What is that kind of attitude?
But for him to be naive enough to make that comment, he's living in Cloud Cuckoo land. At this rate, I struggle seeing us getting out of the group. I really do struggle, especially now that our group, you know, we know we've got Georgia in our group as well now. Won the Tier 2 championship today. We're not going to get out of our group, and I will make that blunt statement now. We've got cracking individuals, but as a team, we're not good enough to get out of our group at the World Cup. now is the time the Union need to act. Are they going to stick with Pivac? If they are, there needs to be changes underneath him. Attacking game has not worked at all during the Six Nations. Defense has been okay at times, but ultimately, you look at the key moments that have cost us in this championship, and yesterday that last try, defenses were all at 6s and 7s. Our kick chase has been something that's let us down all tournament. Kick chase let us down in the Geelong try against France a fortnight ago. Kick chase was dreadful, and Capuoso made an absolute mockery of the dog-leg defence that was chasing up. There's no hunger there, mate. And I don't know if it was just you watching it yesterday. I looked at the clock at one point, and it was 71 minutes. And we were slowing the ball down. We go into the box kick. We didn't look like a team that wanted to win that game yesterday. We looked like... And I will use these words. We looked arrogant yesterday at times. I
agree, 100%, especially at the start of the game. I know there's a few other people waiting in, so we will move on to the other games in just a second. So do bear with us. But at the start of the game, especially turning down those easy 3 points, time after time again, going to the corner. And Tom Shanklin said something on Scrum 5 today. He said, well, it's Italy. We should be backing ourselves. But Italy under Kieran Crowley have improved. The regions are improving. The under-20s team is improving. And I don't just want this to be like us complaining about Wales. We're Welsh, so we are obviously going to focus mostly on Wales. But Italy were fantastic. They deserved the win. They were the better team throughout. I'm going to ask you one simple question. Wayne Pivac, does he go, yes or no?
He's got to. I'm sorry, simply has to. We've wasted too much time now hoping that we'd see something of the Scarlets game plan that he had. It's been nearly 2 years now, and we've seen nothing.
No, I absolutely agree. There's no identity, no game plan. There's some big issues. Ben, thank you very much. I might get you in back later on. I'll drop you into the studio, but appreciate that. We're going to go over to Ireland now. So we're going to get Stephen in, and then we'll move over to Scotland. I know there's some England fans in the chat. We'll probably be talking about England in about half an hour or so. So if you want to jump off and come back in, that's fine. Scotland will probably talk at about 8:30. So just bear that in mind, folks. If you want to jump off and come back in, that's absolutely sound as well for you boys. So just let us know. Right, let's get Stephen in. Stephen, how are you doing, mate? You well?
Yes, Brandon, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Still feeling it after yesterday, but an Irish victory against Scotland. What did you make of the game? I know you were there. Did you have a good time? And what was the game like?
Yeah, I did. I did have a good time. It was my only ever second Six Nations game ever. Like the last time I went to one was like 9 years ago, and that was France. So it wasn't ended up being a draw. But yeah, like being I think the atmosphere. I think I heard from a few people like yesterday that it was probably one of the best. Yeah, that atmospheres we had at the Aviva. Just after the New Zealand one. And you think about the Wales, and you thought about the Wales. Atmosphere could have been a bit better, but there was a reason for that. Like. And I'll go back from the start of the tournament for, and we just come off the Ultimate Nationals, and we just been in New Zealand, and we just come off this. I count this bandwagon here from a few fans saying, "Oh, we're the best team in the world." I've heard that before, and it has put us in the backside. And I'll tell you this right now, I was not getting ahead of myself coming into this tournament whatsoever. When I saw the first match, which we had against Wales in Lansdowne, your team, and I think we can all both agree that Ireland were a better team on the day, and Wales didn't really have a sniff of a hope to win it. But the crowd, I don't know if you saw at one point, Brandon, I think the crowd at that were doing like these Mexican waves at some point. Now that's very rare. That's very rare for an Irish crowd to do that, apart from an Ultimate International, maybe say against Georgia and Argentina. Like it got that desperate, and they gone through that performance, which it was all right, but it could have been better. And then we head into then after that it's France, and we hear the news that Johnny Sexton is not going to be starting because he's put up a wee minor hamstring problem. We've been buying on the whole time that Joey Carberry has to be the successor to Sexton after this tournament because he's 36 and we have to figure out this backup plan. We've been because I don't know if Sexton has had this backup really apart from Ronan O'Gara for a very long time. Now I'm not going to mention this guy's name because he could have been in the running for Ireland's number 10, but because of certain different circumstances. But we can't have that for a very very long time. So the France games comes along, and we actually put in a really good performance. And we ended up losing the game, but I seriously thought that we end up putting ourselves in a position that we've got good depth in our hands here. And Joey Carberry, I think he could have got man of the match if he played a tiny bit better than what he was doing. But I thought that France were a better team on the day, and we were still in this position that okay, we can move on to Italy now. It'll probably be a dead rubber, and boy was I right. Again, not the best performances, but yet you can say it was Italy at the time. But you just think that I hope it's not one of those flip-flop situations where Ireland are going to have to really, really, really think about where they are, because we got ahead of ourselves really in autumn. Like I was in the situation where yes, I could celebrate New Zealand and all that kind of stuff, but I was going back to 2018 again and what we were doing before that 2019 World Cup, and I was going, nah, I'll celebrate today, then tomorrow, but get back to business. And so by that time, I knew what I was talking about. I knew we were in the long haul here. So, okay, we beat Italy by a bonus point, but I think by nearly 60 points, I guess I predicted. And the next game is England, 2 weeks later. And you're going into a situation where this is where Ireland are going to be really, really tested here in terms of how their depth is, and what people have been buying on about. And boy, was I right in the first, I think it's 15, 20 minutes of the game. We absolutely blissed England in those first 20 minutes, in my opinion. Like those rugby players were going back to when we were playing against the All Blacks a few months ago, but then after that, it sort of like died down, and I think that was Ireland's kind of worst performance for I've seen for a while. Even though we
if I can just jump in there, Stephen, on that point that you're making there, obviously you said first 15, 20 minutes Ireland were very good, and I completely agree with that. And then, as you say, it quickly changed. It felt like Ireland were trying to force it too much, looking for the offload constantly, where later on in the game, they slowly began to just go through the phases, have that patience, and the space opened up. We got a lot of people we want to get through, Stephen, tonight. So on the whole then, how would you summarise this Six Nations for Ireland? Is it a positive? You won a Triple Crown. You pushed France pretty close. A tour to New Zealand in the summer. What do you reflect on with Ireland? And of course, the under-20s today won the Grand Slam as well. So congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually going to mention that point that the Ireland under-20s won the Grand Slam today. I think that plays into part as well. I don't know why, but what I think of the tournament, I feel it's really good from Ireland. I think it's really good that we haven't actually, and I could be really hypocritical here. I think it's good that we have not won a Grand Slam, and we're giving it to France. I feel like we have to play a mark down here as Irish fans if we want to mark ahead ourselves for this World Cup and doing well. I think it was a good tournament. I was really happy to see us win the Triple Crown yesterday, and the atmosphere was brilliant, I thought. And I think overall we can go into the summer, and I think Sexton, for me, Brandon, he's 36. I don't think we should be bring him on that tour. Joey Carberry has to get those minutes under his belt, and if he can get through that, and if we can end up getting even a win in New Zealand, then that, I think for me, Joey Carberry is the future, and that's not me being doubtful. That's me being real. I think Johnny Sexton eventually is going to have to come down a mark where he's going to have to let someone like Joey Carberry take over for a few games, because we need that depth, like you said. But overall, the tournament, I was really, really happy, and kind of gave what we got, really. But I think kind of in the middle of performances from there, really good performances, really not so good performances. But I think we can move on now, hopefully with a much better squad. I think that's going to be the aim now going forward, is the depth, and especially with the under-20s win today. How good is our depth going forward? Because I do feel like in a few positions it's going to have to be fixed on, but I believe that this squad is capable of doing good things in the future.
Definitely. I think Ireland are in a pretty good spot, much better than Wales, and we've heard what Ben had to say, and I'm sure I'll add to that later on tonight. Guys, if you're watching, do head over to Stephen Somerville Irish Rugby, subscribe there and check out what he's doing. Stephen, we may get you on back later on the show, but if you need to dash away, then that's fine as well. But I will drop you down.
No, it's okay. I'm free.
Awesome. All right, we'll get you in there near the end, and we'll ask you a few more questions. We'll drop Stephen out there, and we're going to welcome one of the subscribers of the channel on. Conor Quainen is going to join us now. I've been a subscriber for, oh my gosh, such a long time. But we're going to welcome him now. How are you doing, sir? You well?
Not too bad. How are you keeping?
Yeah, very, very well. Let's chat about Ireland then, this Six Nations. Stephen there saying that on the whole, it's been a very positive campaign. From your perspective, what have you made of your team?
I think in a way, he is right. definitely, I think there has been an element of positivity about the way Ireland have gone about things. You know, certainly to me, I think the idea was how they would be able to sort out dealing with the 9 and 10 for a start, because it's been a couple of years that the likes of Murray and Sexton have been around and have really set the benchmark for future 9s and 10s to come through. I would have loved to have seen that that developed, but because obviously obviously there is that Ireland have a prime squad going for them at the moment, especially in the forwards and in the backs, especially with the performances of the provinces in the United Rugby Championship and also in the Champions Cup. And certainly I think there were elements throughout most of the games that they played in where I did see positives, make no mistake about it. But I also think as well at the same time, there were a couple of things that did frustrate me a little bit. As Stephen touched on, the fact that we keep relying on Sexton is a concern for me, to be honest with you, because he's in his 30s. He's in his mid 30s now. He'll be 38 in the World Cup. And Conor Murray, who was on the bench, fair enough. It's grand that at least Farrell saw that he needed to make way for someone younger, like Jamison Gibson Park, and that was a change, and that was a positive change. But still keeping Murray around was, well, I understand it was for the experience. I also think it was a bit of a detriment at the same time because, if Ireland are going to be building up for the World Cup, they're going to need to start bringing in even more younger players, especially in areas where I feel they have failed in recent years, especially at the World Cup. Of course, sorry, I do apologize if I'm going on for so long. It's just that it's my very first time doing this, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I'm saying either.
No, it's brilliant. Absolutely, I 100% agree with you. Obviously, Sexton is retiring after the World Cup. We've seen Carberry as well step up to the role. I'm going to throw a question at you here from the comments, actually. One of the big issues I thought in that France game was this question: how do we match France physically in the first half? I felt like France just bullied you up front. Is that a concern for Ireland at all, do you think, heading into the World Cup?
It's actually a good thing that he brought that up, because I hadn't thought about it, but thinking about it now, I'm really concerned about how we deal with physical teams, because that game against France was exactly an epitomization of the work of the very man that I said many times how much I hate, and that is Sean Edwards. because definitely he was undoubtedly the perfect fit that France needed, especially in terms of their defensive aspect, because the last few years they were leaking tries. They were just so poor defensively. But obviously, having brought him in, they've completely changed that. They've completely improved. And now sometimes I think it's hard for teams nowadays to score tries against them, to be honest with you. They have to be fortunate to rely on French ill discipline sometimes. But certainly since he's come in, he's certainly beefed up the French in physicality. Certainly, I think they would be up on par with South Africa. Potentially, maybe even better, let's be honest. To be honest with you, like in terms of how we would match them physically, the worrying thing for me is, I'm not so sure. Like, I mean, obviously, the likes of Andrew Porter, they certainly would be physical examples of bringing that physicality, whereas the likes of the back row forwards like Caelan Doris and Jack Conan, they're not as physical. You see, they're very much the wing/forward hybrid, if you know what I mean. A bit like when you had what's his name, Justin Tipuric for Wales in the recent years. While he didn't look the most physical forward, certainly at the same time, though, he did so much with the ball that offered that little bit of expansive nature that Wales were very good at over the years. And that's kind of like what Ireland had been wanting to work on in recent times. But in doing so, they've kind of robbed themselves a little bit of that physical nature that they once had over the years. There has to be a bit of smartness, I think, in how Ireland deal with France physically. They're certainly not going to match them up front. Let's be brutally honest, especially if you have the one guy if you have the ball carrier who runs in, and it takes too long for the support to get to him, and you've got a French player already over the ball. Immediately if they're going to turn it over.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go on.
No, you go. Go, please.
I definitely, the coaching team, especially Paul O'Connell, who's the lineout coach, they're going to have to come together. Paul obviously was very much a physical player in his prime as well for both Munster and Ireland. So they're going to have to come together, and they're going to have to try and figure some way, to get around, the French physicality. They're certainly not going to match them up front. I feel, especially if we end up playing it, especially if we ended up playing up the World Cup, we've no chance of that. They're going to have to find a bit of smartness around it. Because teams like New Zealand, for instance, they're well able to know how to get around the physical nature of the game. Because while they have physical enough forwards, they certainly wouldn't be as physical as South Africa, and they certainly wouldn't be as physical as France, as epitomized by how they performed in the November Test series. So I think again, it's just going to have to come down to that smartness. I think in being able to get around it, because there's no doubt about it. A physical team is a big advantage, but even that has its limits. So it's about how well Ireland can exploit that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at France, this Six Nations, we'll chat about France later on, but they have the perfect balance between having that physicality and then having those players in the backs who can create special moments. Canon Quayton, thank you very much for jumping on. We're going to be doing more of these in the future, so I'd love to have you on in the future. I'm going to drop you down in the chat, but thank you very much. We are now going to move on to Scotland, and I've been chatting to this guy over the last few hours, over the last day or so after the game, and he is not happy, and I'm sure we're going to hear it from him. Let's just quickly run through some of your comments before we do that. And also another concern is on Ireland is not finishing chances near the line and knocking the ball on a lot. I feel the front five needs to be more in depth in that spot. You can see how bad Ireland scrum was against England. That was an issue, and not forcing the pass as well. I think we saw that in the England game, didn't we? Don't forget, though, if you are watching and you want to join and have your say on your team, there's a link in the chat. Just click that link. You'll come in and we'll get you in as soon as we can. Let's move on to Scotland now then. I'm delighted to be joined by Dan from Stuck in the Scrum. We spoke about the excitement ahead of the Six Nations. How are you feeling today?
Relieved.
You can't be as bad as me. You cannot be as bad as me.
No, not at all. I mean, we beat Italy, so I can smile about that at least. But not much else to go on other than that. I mean, going into this, so much hope. I mean, last Six Nations, if one or two other results had gone our way, we could have won it. This year, beating England and Murrayfield seems long ago now. And I was glad it was over. Like in that last 20 minutes of the Ireland game, I was saying to my dad that I can't wait for this to be done. Just to put it away for another year. It's another sort of false dawn, wasted opportunity. I mean, Ireland are a better team than us currently. They're bigger, they were stronger, but the thing is, they didn't crack under pressure. We didn't help ourselves. We were ill-disciplined, gave away so many penalties. Scotland are ill-disciplined on and off the pitch. The players don't turn up at big moments. For all the great things that Hogg does, he seems to have a problem. I'm not sure if he felt he had to do it alone. I always feel that Scotland play poorly when he does feel like he has to do it himself. I mean, that was an easy thing. A schoolboy would have known to pass to the inside. It just everywhere at the moment, and I don't know if that's just tactics. Is it the players? We've gone from having the best defence in the Six Nations to the worst. We give away the most penalties. I don't know where Scotland go from here, really. I mean, some other sides have won the Six Nations with far worse squads than what we have currently. This is arguably the best Scotland side in a generation, and they can't finish above fourth. So it's quite disheartening. I mean, like Rory Darge and Pierre Schumann, I think, are probably the only two sort of shining lights I can take away from this campaign. But it just in a high pressure situation, Scotland always seem to go the wrong way. I think it's a lack of belief in themselves, or something in the Scottish psyche where if they're against an Ireland or against a Wales in a really tight game, that Scotland will come out on the losing end of that, 9 times out of 10. So it's a really, really sort of bitter one to take, but it's even thinking, where'd you go from here?
Yeah. If we focus a bit more on the Ireland-Scotland one, the final game of the Six Nations, and obviously you've mentioned some of the results so far. I think that was the worst Scotland have performed in any of the games. I'm going to be totally honest. I thought Scotland were appalling in that game. The discipline was out the window, and you did mention the situation prior to the game where it came out that 6 of the players, and it wasn't as if it was fringe squad members. It was Hogg, Finn Russell, Darcy Graham, Sione Tupelotu, all pretty experienced guys really, and who'd been in the Scotland camp on the whole for a while. Do you think that would have affected the players going in? Because I felt that was in the back of their minds, and it almost felt as if, well, Finn Russell was dropped, but Hogg wasn't, because can you afford to drop Hogg, or can you afford to drop Ali Price? And these are British and Irish Lions players. Do you think Townsend maybe got that one wrong? Do you think he maybe should have just dropped and said, you know what, I'm the boss here, this is the authority I need to show, and just dropped a lot of them?
Maybe. I mean, I've had a feeling for a while that Townsend excludes players on sort of a personal basis instead of a skill basis. I think with him, not really bringing Hastings into it until the Italy game and only giving him 3 minutes, that after he dropped Finn Russell, I mean, his only backup for both of those players was Blair Kinghorn. So you can't play in 2 positions at once. So it was either you drop Kinghorn or you drop Hogg. And then what do you do about the other 4? I don't think they seem too phased about it. I think Kinghorn seemed a bit out of his depth. I mean, at that game, I expected him to start just to be an extra playmaker on the park, but I thought he would play, in the place of the suspended Duhan van der Merwe. I thought you'd see Kinghorn on the wing. He shares a lot of similar attributes to him, apart from he's a better passer, better kicker. And I was sort of hopeful that, Kinghorn's got a bit of a better running game compared to Russell. But you saw the difference when Finn Russell came onto the pitch. Yeah. I mean, he only got about 10 minutes, but when you came on, you could see the quality difference between Russell and Kinghorn. It's massive. I mean, Finn Russell was on the pitch for 2 minutes, and I think it was Mark Bennett he put through, and one of the only sort of good bits from the game. But I look, all credit has to go to Ireland. Ireland were the far, far better side. They were dominant. It was just so much pressure, just wave after wave after wave of Irish attack. I think the most frustrating thing from a Scottish perspective was we weren't competitive. Like if we had lost the game, sort of like 25-27 or something like that, you could probably take it on the chin. Yeah. But I mean, it was poor. And we just seemed to, every chance we did get, we seemed to just choke. So yeah, I mean, I've never been sold on Gregor Townsend as a manager. I don't think that he's been terrible, sort of like his campaign, but with the squad of players that he has to do better. Just constantly fourth, fifth in the Six Nations. I mean, come to the World Cup, can't get out the group stages. Especially with this crop of players, you have to do better than that.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question. Now, obviously, here in Wales, there's a lot of debate at the minute about the future of Wayne Pivac. And I'll let people know at the end of this what I think about that and what should happen and what I think will happen. I know we're 18 months out from a World Cup, but what is your stance on Gregor Townsend? Do you think that it's time to say, right, this experiment hasn't worked? Or do you just say, right, we just keep going to the World Cup, it's too late, who's on the market, who's available? I know you mentioned one name to me in the week. Yeah. I don't know if you could get him out of his contract at his current club, but it'd be interesting. So what is your feeling about Townsend at the minute?
I'm in two minds. You could sort of just play it through to the World Cup, and I suspect that we'll have a similar results to what we have now. Honestly, if Townsend stays in charge, next Six Nations, Scotland will come fourth again, probably, maybe fifth. I can't really see them doing much better than that. If they keep playing the way they're doing, they've got South Africa and Ireland in the group.
Yeah.
Unless something really clicks and Scotland get back to the upward curve that they had been shown for the last couple of years, that's not going to change. I I think a lot of the problems in the Scottish mentality, and I think I said this before, if Scotland were to deviate and go a different route from Gregor Townsend, I know a lot of people might be thinking Mike Blair, but I'd give him another few seasons at Edinburgh yet. I would probably go for a non-Scottish manager. I think that if it's the Scottish defeatist sort of mindset that's the problem, I'd probably move away from him. I'd have to be someone with a big personality that knows how to work. The likes of Finn Russell, the likes of Stuart Hogg, he's going to have a proven track record of winning things and winning things with a smaller country. Personally, if Gregor Townsend left the job tomorrow, I'd probably go after someone like Ronan O'Gara. I think he would probably make a great manager for Scotland. I don't see it happening, though. I think we'll go through a bit of mediocrity up until the World Cup. We might get the odd scalp here and there, probably nothing more than plucky opposition. We might get the odd win against England or Ireland on a one-off game, but just not be able to build on it. And I think Gregor Townsend probably will go after the World Cup unless he somehow gets us to the semi-finals, which I don't see happening. But the whole build-up to this campaign, I was saying to myself, don't have a knee-jerk reaction, don't go nuclear, don't throw your toys at the pram. But I'd like to be proven wrong. I've been waiting to be proven wrong, but I don't see where it's coming from.
Yeah, let's get to some of the comments. What happened off the field was a drinking session. Basically, 6 of the team from Scotland went out, breached protocol. Apparently, some of them returned when they were told to. Some didn't. We don't know who that was. Maybe that's why Finn Russell was left on the bench. We don't know. Certainly, the Kinghorn experiment didn't work. Sean thinks that changing coach out from the World Cup is a big risk. Things could go backwards. I agree with that. And yeah, I'd be very surprised if anything was to happen with Scotland. Less surprised with Wales. And then obviously we've got the England situation, which we're going to get Freddie on in just a second. And Porter doesn't seem to think that O'Gara is going to go anywhere near the job. But it's not a bad shout. The way he talks in the media, I really like the way he talks. He's got La Rochelle. They've really risen up over the last few years and become a real powerhouse in European rugby and in France as well. Play a great style of rugby as well. Finally then, in the summer, where are Scotland going on tour?
We've got a tour of Argentina, so they got 3 back-to-back games against the Argentinians.
So what's the feeling like ahead of that? Is that going to be Argentina? Were really poor in last year's Autumn Nations and in the rugby championship last year. They were poor in that. What would be the feeling going into that? Would it be just let a lot of young guys go, or would it be go with the best team you can and get some good wins?
I think that you've to bring some of the big names across for experience, but you're going to have to be some of the less experienced people. I'd like to see Ollie Smith from Glasgow Warriors get a couple of games at fullback. I'd like to see Blair Kinghorn get a couple of games under his belt, because I think actually talking about O'Gara, he said this about Jaco van der Walt when he started against Ireland in that Autumn Nations Cup one. An international full half is far, far different after about his 10th cap. I mean, your first, you're going to make so many mistakes in your first 10. I give Blair Kinghorn the starting range at that. I'd like to see a lot more Ben Velicott. I mean, he only got 3-4 minutes against Italy, and I thought he did really good. I mean, I like Ben White, but he's the same type of player that Ali Price is, so he doesn't offer much of a change off the bench. So I'd like to see Velicott get a lot more game. Ollie Smith. My most controversial point is I'd like to see Stuart Hogg stripped of his captaincy.
Wow, who are you giving it to?
I'd probably someone like Jamie Ritchie. I think he'd make a great Scotland captain. Maybe Ali Price. Hogg is an influential player, but I think he plays better without the weight of responsibility on his shoulders.
I think
so I think it should be handed over to someone else. It was the same like Exeter. I might even drop Hogg for a game or two. You saw when at Ham Dexter when he got a bit out of form, and he came back a far, far better player to it. I think because Finn Russell, Stuart Hogg, they almost see themselves as undroppable. I think they've become a little bit complacent. They're both fantastic players, but they're out of form. And I think something has to be shown to them that they aren't untouchable. So I think working on who can play backup for both of them, just to give them that little bit of fear, that little bit of competition. I think Stuart Hogg probably will play better without the captaincy. I'd give it to someone like Jamie Richier or Ali Price going forward.
Yeah, we saw something similar in Wales with Sam Warburton, if you remember correctly. He, got rid of the captaincy. Alan Wynne took over, and he thrived off that. And for me, looking in at Scotland, I do think there's an authority problem, and I do think there's a complacency problem as well, where players feel like very comfortable in their positions. And I think the mindset needs to change, where it's, against Ireland, it was so poor. I was just looking at some of the stats now, and Scotland gave away 15 penalties. I mean, even Wales against Italy, even Wales against Ireland, we didn't give away that many penalties. So it is a little bit of an issue there. Scotland need more clubs to strengthen their pool of players. Having 2 clubs is nowhere near enough. I know you have an opinion on that. Quickly, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's where do you put it? Do you put it in the Borders or do you put it in Aberdeen? I think that we'll only have in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and the model seems to be once they get to a certain calibre, you ship them off to England or France. But I mean, during the off weeks or the break weeks, they don't get that rest. They have to go back to their clubs and play. So it does hamper us in sort of big competitions. I would like to see a third pro team as a start. Preferably in the long term, I'd like to see 4 or 5 after 10 years, but 3 would be a start. I'd probably like to see one up north. Aberdeen would probably be the obvious one for me. If not, maybe down in the Borders, somewhere like Melrose, which rugby's bigger than football down in that part of the world. So I'd be surprised if it happened, but no, it is a valid point. We just, with 2 clubs, we're limited to the amount of players that we can blood through. I know they've got the Scottish Premiership and they've got the Super Six, but that can only blood so many players at once. So to give them that exposure, I think they have to keep doing it. And look, Italy, I think we're just starting to see them now that they're starting to click. They've moved up that gear now. They're not going to be at the bottom forever. And if we keep going the way we're going, not to be pessimistic, but we might see Italy lift the Six Nations title before we see Scotland do it again. So I think Scotland really need to, take control of this before it goes too far.
Before we start losing to Italy, I wonder who that happened to this weekend. Cheers, Dan, for jumping on. I'm sure I'll catch up with you in the week. And check out Stuck in the Scrum as well. Brilliant Facebook group. I'll chuck a link in the chat, as always, later on. We're going to move on now. We're going to chat about England. England, a really interesting Six Nations. Again, finishing 4th this year, England, and really not having the great third, for England this year. But again, not the greatest of Six Nations. 2 wins, 3 losses. Delighted to welcome someone we haven't had on the channel for a while, actually. Freddie from FBTC Rugby. Freddie, how are you?
How are you? Fine, thanks. Not so much a good weekend for you.
Oh, thanks for reminding me. I'm wearing an Italy top because I got to say, and I've said it before, but fair play to Italy. They were the better team. But for England, again, the table looks not too bad for England, but the results as well probably aren't the true reflection of the season. Quickly, how do you summarise the campaign for England? How do you feel after the Six Nations?
I feel the first 3 games against Wales, Scotland and Italy, we didn't play well at all. I think we're lucky to get a win against Wales. We were poor against Scotland, and then Italy, it could have been 50. It could have been 50 easily on that day. But if they played the last 2 games against France and Ireland, even they had a red card against Ireland, if they played the way they did, I still think they would have beaten Scotland, and I think they would have beaten Wales more convincingly. I see there are some positives, but there's not enough. And defensively, we look okay. We're not as good as we were 2 years ago, but attackingly, it's really worrying me. I don't see any creativity. If you look what Marcus Smith's been doing for Harlequins, he looks fantastic, creating so many options. in England shirt, he just looks blunt. And we've only scored about 6 or 7, around the 5 to 10 tries this Six Nations. That is, considering most teams score about 5 or 6 tries against Italy, it's extremely poor. And you've got to start question yourself. Overall, I would say it's been okay, but being third will paper over the cracks, and Eddie Jones has got a lot to improve on.
Yeah, absolutely. What you just mentioned there is really interesting. I'm just looking at the table here. Actually, let me just do this. Let me share my screen and show you what the table actually looks like at the end. And as you can see here, England's sitting in third. But if you look across here, tries for 8, conceded 12 tries. If you compare that to Ireland and to France, Ireland have scored 24 tries, France scored 17. Even Scotland have scored more. England scored the same amount of tries as Wales. And it did feel like to me like England never really clicked throughout the tournament, as you said. I thought Marcus Smith, I thought this was going to be a tournament where he really like showed himself as possibly in like the top 10 fly halves in the world, but it just hasn't clicked for him. But one player I wanted to highlight who I thought has been amazing the Six Nations for England is Maro Itoje. I thought he's been absolutely incredible. Freddie Stewart as well has been brilliant. I know you're a Tigers fan. Talk to me a little bit about Freddie Stewart. How good has he been?
I said this. So basically, we was given a chance just after lockdown. He was given a chance. There'd been some things that happened in the club recently, and I think he's fantastic. He's I don't really say world class, but I generally believe he's at that world class level now. He's so good under the high ball. If he just defense, and the one thing he's so consistent. He hasn't in England shirt yet. Touch wood. He hasn't put a bad foot, in my opinion, a bad foot wrong. And I think with Maro Itoje, I think people say he's a penalty count. Yeah, he might concede penalty, but he's playing on the edge of line. You are going to concede penalties when you do that. You just got to accept that. And I think it's crazy how good I think he's in 26, so he's still got loads to improve on. But I think Maro, Genge, Stewart, and even Smith, I think were our 4 best players. I don't think anyone apart from that really stood out from in the whole Six Nations.
Yeah. A question for you. Do England need a new captain? Obviously, Owen Farrell's out injured. Courtney Lawes took over the role. I know Courtney Lawes plays for your big rivals in Northampton Saints, so try not to hold that too much against him. But what did you think of Courtney Lawes this Six Nations? A lot of injuries for him as well, so we didn't see him all that often. But leaders on the pitch for England felt like England lacking a little bit of direction. Did you feel that was a problem, the game plan, not enough ideas in attack?
I just generally don't think we have a natural leader. Owen Farrell is the biggest leader we've got, and he's a massive, and the Lions tour, all the players voted for him. So he definitely is a leader in that leadership group. But he's gonna when we come back, we're gonna see Owen Farrell start at 12 in the autumn. Yeah. That's what's just gonna happen. I think there is a lack of leadership. But I think Ellis Genge, the criticism he's getting, captain at Leicester this year, I think he's improved. His leadership is top quality. He doesn't get the recognition he deserves as a leader. And I think that's something that will grow further, more and more years. Maybe in a couple more years, I'd think about giving the captaincy to him.
Yeah. Let's talk about the main man, the man at the top, Eddie Jones. Again, as I said, only 2 wins this year. What do you think about him? Obviously, World Cup 18 months away. So, and the RFU today came out and backed him publicly. So nothing is going to change for him. But let's say after the World Cup, I think we are going to see a lot of head coaches leaving after the World Cup. Who would you be looking at for England? Would someone like a Rob Baxter, a Pat Lam, someone like that, would you be looking at?
I don't think Rob Baxter. I was speaking to some Exeter fans. They think he's quite far past it now. If they were going to, that they don't think he's the right. They don't believe him much anymore. Pat Lam is a guy that I think he will go to Wales. He said he wants to go to Wales. I think he probably will be in the 2023. I think you'll go for him next. But I see 2 options: Razzie Erasmus and Steve Borthwick. I see they're the main targets for England rugby. Steve Borthwick, because he's been previous connections in the club, and you look where that Leicester are at the moment, how he's changed that team completely. And Razzie Erasmus, you just fear they would contact him in 2021 when Eddie Jones was. This is rumoured, but I just feel they will go for him. And no matter what you say, he does win. He gets the best out of his players. He won South Africa a World Cup. I don't agree what he does, but I do think that's all they'll go for. And Eddie Jones is too close to a World Cup to sack him, and the RFE wouldn't do that.
No, I agree, and I think we're going to see that with all the home nations. I doubt we're going to see all that much change at the top. For you then, apart from Freddie Stewart and Maro Toje, anyone else stood out? I know you mentioned Ellis Genge. Harvey Randall, I thought, had a decent few appearances, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he's the start. He's the 9 for the future. I just think Ben Youngs, he's a great player, great legend in England, but I think he's just a bit slow to run. And I bring a Quirkle Mitchell in. But one thing I did want to say is England are not playing a 12. They're playing a guy that is a 13 in a 12 shirt. And they're relying way too much on one man called Manu Tuolangi. And they need to give players like Dingwell, Ojomo, or Kelly, that both have been superb in the Premiership, given the opportunity this summer to have a go. Because I generally think, obviously, I'm going to be a bit biased here from Dan Kelly. So I think Dan Kelly's the future England 12 and former Ireland under 20s. He's been when he wasn't there a couple of weeks against Saracens, we looked at a different team without him. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, England going to Australia in the summer tour to Australia down under. How would you like England to approach that tour? Obviously, Australia have got a lot better over the past year or so under Dave Rennie. Would it be about taking your best team, trying to win 3-0, or is it about taking some young guys, giving them an opportunity out in Australia? What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see a mix of both, really. I would like to bring some key men like Marcus Smith, Freddie Stewart, Maro Toje, but then bring some players like Dan Kelly, like I just said, Alfie Barbary, and a couple of other options too. Maybe Ben Curry or something. I really rate him. But I think they need to, first of all, they need to get this attack going. They need to really try and explore it a bit more, because I just don't think it's good enough at the moment where they want to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, folks, make sure to head over to Freddie's channel, FBTC Rugby. I'll drop a link in the next few minutes, so make sure to head over there. We're going to hear from Freddie later on and get his thoughts on the play of the tournament and the breakthrough player. I'm going to drop Freddie down into the studio. Don't forget, folks, that if you'd like to, you can jump on. You can have your say via the link. So if you want to chat about anything, I know some people will be saying pivak out in the comments. I know some people have been saying that there's some issues within Ireland. So if you want to jump on, make sure to click that link. Really chilled. Some of you have already done it, so make sure to come in and have your say. I'm now going to share with you a clip that I did with an Italian. It was a painful clip to record because obviously I'm Welsh, but we had a chat about what this meant for Italy. So I'm going to share the video with you now, and you can let me know your thoughts. But this was his immediate reaction to what happened in the game, and straight after the game, after Wales had lost and Italy had won for the first time in 37 games. So take a listen.
Excitement, but I have to say that between the try of Adams and Capozzo's final pass to Padovani for the try, there have been 8 minutes where I kind of lost hope, because that was typical Italy, losing contact at the end of the game, making you dream, but then bringing you back on earth pronto. So I was not expecting it, was really not expecting it. And so the way it happened, where it happened in Cardiff, I mean, the temple of rugby, it was really emotional for me, because I mean, I've been through all the last 7 years of no victories in the Six Nations, so I was ready for yet another tournament with no victory and a lot of talk about us going out of it, blah blah blah. So it was refreshing. That's the word, refreshing.
So there you go. Those are the thoughts of Matteo from Lione Fury, which is an Italian rugby podcast, but they do a lot of work in English as well. I'm going to drop a link to what they do in the chat in just a second. And yeah, we can hear from them in a little bit and more. We're going to hear from them a little bit later on. But if you do want to jump in, folks, make sure to jump in soon. We're nearly at the end, actually. So if you want to jump in, have your say, you can do that. Let's go back to Stephen. We haven't heard from Stephen for a while. Let's get him in. Quickly before we get your player of the tournament, Stephen, and your breakthrough player, tell me a little bit about the under-20s. Grand Slam champions smashed Scotland today. How good is that for Irish rugby in general, do you think?
I think it shows that I haven't paid too much to it. I definitely can see what they're trying to do. First, for an under-20 side like Ireland to win a Grand Slam is it shows good progression, and it shows that there's good young players coming through that we're in the year 2022. Some of these guys will hopefully be 20 or 21 by the time World Cup comes, and you want to see them get minutes for their club teams in Ireland, and that's going to be the next big thing. I think, in my opinion, they're going to have to get some game time in the club level if they want to break in through into the international level. Look at an example, mate. Look at Gavin Coombs, look at Rob Balogun, look at Keith Earls. Those are players who could start for Ireland, and they're not even in the starting lineup. They're playing for their club. Look at Munster yesterday. I think most of their was near enough a full team. They went down to Lions and they lost. And I think the South African teams are really starting to prove they're coming into this tournament. But apart from that, I think that the under-20s winning today was definitely a good sign for Irish depth. We've got that depth already. So that's hopefully that. It's hopeful that I can hopefully see some of these guys in a year and a half's time in the World Cup. I think that'd be good to get that because you need as much depth as you can going forward, especially for the international side. I think Leinster have got someone on the lines of that. So that's what I'm really hoping for, to see some of those guys in a year and a half's time. But I'm really happy that that they were able to do it.
Message for you, Stephen. Farrell must bring Nathan Doak and Craig Casey to New Zealand. Need to blood a future 9 ASAP. I know you're a huge fan of Nathan Doak, being an Ulster man. He can play 10 as well. Really exciting youngster. Would you like to see him in the Irish camp soon, or do you think it's a little bit too early for him?
I wouldn't say it's too early for him. I think he's shown great grip. Starts his first full year as part of the squad. Nathan Doak for me is there's I think that people like being said he could be the successor to John Cooney. I just think that performance he had against Leinster was okay, but we just need that John Cooney to sort of get the ball more faster in terms of getting out more to the players, which we can't like struggle against Leinster, but we won the game. I think Nathan Doak is still learning. I mean, he's only 20 years old this season. And Craig Casey, I don't know if he's like similar age, but I think he's like maybe a few years older than Nathan Doak. If the guy, if he's asking me about if I like to Nathan Doak or Craig Casey in the tour, I think I called obviously Saxon not to be in the for the summer tour. It'd be good to see Craig Casey in the summer tour, but it would not surprise me if Conor Murray was in there too. But if that's the case, if you take a Gibson Park out, I think Gibson Park is crucial to this side now. And I don't think we should drop Gibson Park at this point in time where he's been just introduced to the side. He's getting used to the whole plan to how Andy Farrell wants to play his style, because it's very, very attacking way to how we're doing it. I think dropping like Gibson Park now would be a bit of a sort of a weird one. I don't know why, but Nathan Doak and Craig Casey, and I really have to show in the next few months if they are going to do that, then they're going to have to get up to the likes of Gibson Park's level. To be fair, I just don't think that Nathan Doak and Craig Casey are near enough at that level, but I feel like they will improve. I just think that I would like to see Nathan Doak, but I think he'd be like behind the pack in order ahead of that tour, but he'll just need a lot to learn, in my opinion.
Definitely. Finally, then, who's your player of the tournament? Who do you think's been the best player in this year's Six Nations? If you could pick one player,
is this for like my country, or is it for any of the teams?
For all of them. For all of them.
Oh goodness me! I'll pick out two players. One for the whole tournament, and one for my country. I'll start with Ireland. If there's one player that's really got kind of stir for me is I have to go on the lines of either I think Dan Sheehan or Hugo Keenan. The reason I say Dan Sheehan, I'll go with Dan Sheehan. The reason I said Dan Sheehan is because now he came in for the majority of the game when he came on for Roman Gallagher in the French game, and he actually did really good. And he kind of carried that on, going forward. And he's pulled it. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of pulling my strings to see if whether Gallagher or Sheehan is who's better. He had a really good performance yesterday, And yes, he could have had a bit of a much better game against England. But I think Dan Sheehan has shown that if you put him in the likes of maybe say a Porter or Vernon, I think there's no downgrade to that. I think Dan Sheehan is one for the future, and I think he's really shone among other players in this tournament. I think the likes of, you could say Kenan Doris, and has been another one. I mean, he's a number 8, but he's got to use that number 6 shirt. That he's done a job there, which is really good to see. But I would go for Dan Sheehan overall, because I just thought he's done a really good job ahead of like the likes of Rowan Gallagher to get over this line and get a triple crown, and he got man of the match yesterday. So that can only help the difference between either Gallagher or Chinham. Well, who's going to get that number 2 shirt? But that's who my player tournament for him would be. But in terms of the whole tournament, I think there's only one player, and I think that's Dupont. I think like when you saw Dupont yesterday pull off that world class try, it was just that's how you play rugby. That is how you want your scrum halves to play. And how can you stop that? How can you stop Dupont going forward? He kind of scares me. He kind of scares me going forward before that World Cup. The French have got the home advantage, and I think Dupont has carried that French team with leadership, and he's kind of shown that how to get like a French team over the line with a Grand Slam. You can only put more teams that worry, because they've carried that on from New Zealand that win back in November. Like hopefully this is a French side. This is a French side we can all look at and say they're the new best team in the world. But if that's my player of the tournament, it has to be Dupont. He was just world class in my opinion.
Yeah, it's been a brilliant tournament. Stephen, thank you for jumping on. As always, check out Stephen's channel. There's a link in the description. Head over there and subscribe as well. And I'm sure we'll have Stephen on the channel in the future shortly. Thank you very much for Stephen for jumping on. And let's quickly look at some of your comments. If Wales is to keep Pivac, needs a hard man in his team to put a spark into the players who are slipping back to the old days where we depend on Jigs to kick points and Shane to work miracles. I'll give my thoughts quickly on Pivac later on. We're nearly done here. I'm going to get Dan in quickly to give his thoughts on the player of the tournament and also on the standout player for Scotland. Standout player for Scotland. You mentioned Rory Darge. Is he the one who stands out?
Yeah, if I'd put down sort of like the best player and the breakthrough player for the whole tournament and for Scotland. So for Scotland, for us, Rory Darge was the easy pick. I mean, he had the baptism of fire in that heavy defeat to France, but he had about 5 turnovers in that game, scored a try. I mean, you couldn't ask more for a debut. He's going to be some player. He's only had a handful of games, so I mean, he's a really, really bright talent to look forward to for the future. Our best player, I thought, was Pierre Schumann. He really, really powerful. I think he's taken that jersey off of Rory Sutherland now. I think even when Sutherland's fully fit, that you'll probably find that Pierre Schumann's our preferred choice to start. I mean, even that line break against Starland, I thought was quite nice to see. But for such a large man, and I've known he was going to be Scottish qualified. I've been shouting about him for the last 2 or 3 seasons. So for us, I think there are 2 best players. If you to look at the breakthrough player for the whole tournament, it's hard to argue against Capuzzo.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had 2 caps. He came on for 10, 15 minutes against Scotland, scored 2 tries, and then he killed Wales right at the end.
Thank you very much for reminding me. That's very nice.
You're more than welcome. But, it's hard to look beyond him. Lamaro, maybe, for Italy. I mean, a lot of these breakthrough players for Italy. I mean, I had Smith down on my list of potentials, but I mean, with the pack he has in front of him, he's been great, but I wouldn't put him as a breakthrough or best player, maybe like an honourable mention. But Smith, if you go for the best player of the tournament, Stephen was talking about Dupont, it's hard to go against that. But I actually had 2 Irishmen down for me. I had Van de Fleer and Gibson Park. Okay. I thought both had outstanding I wouldn't say seasons, but outstanding competitions. Farrell and Gibson Park look fantastic. Arguably the best scrum half in the Six Nations on form anyway, and that includes DuPont. Van de Fleer is an animal. An animal. He's I wouldn't know who else would compete with him, but right now anyway. But they'd be my shouts for sort of player of the tournament, I'd say, yeah, DuPont, Van de Vliet, or Gibson Park. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there have been some outstanding players. And finally, make sure I've just put a link in the chat to check out Stuck in the Scrum, really good Facebook group. Go ahead over there. Dan is always busy on there doing different things, and I'm pretty active in the group as well. Dan, always appreciate you jumping on, and I'll catch up with you very, very soon. Thank you very much to Dan. Really do appreciate that. Just before we get to Freddie, I'm just going to play another part of that interview that I did with the Italians to get their thoughts on the game today. I asked them, what does this mean for Italian rugby? What impact will this have on Italian rugby?
Extremely important, because besides the obvious reasons of winning, therefore attracting viewers and bringing the talk back into on what rugby means for our country, it is important because it testifies the work that has been done in the years, maybe too much in the background, building an academy system, a formation system, a structured progress path that goes from under 14 to under 20. And well, I am answering you right after the under 20 Italy just won also against Wales in Wales. It just finished. I was watching the game, and I mean, this doesn't happen often. So it testifies to the fact that there has been a lot of work done in the age grade teams, especially. Sadly, this didn't translate into the senior team yet. So we are seeing now a lot of young players coming through, young talent coming through, which finally is elevating the level of the senior team. But it wasn't happening in the last 7 years because we were relying a lot on how do you call them? On players that you can call from other countries. Sorry for my English here. From equiparation and processes like that. Once we started relying less on that crutch and more on our production, we had physiologically to go through a period where we won nothing, because you start building towards a different direction, and that's where you lack maybe expertise, charisma, leadership. These things come with time, with time. Yeah, that's it.
So there we go. Those are the thoughts again of Matteo, and we'll hear one last clip just in a little bit. Let me welcome Freddie back into the chat. Freddie, same question for you, mate, then. Who's been the standout player for England? We mentioned a few, but if you could pick one, and who's been your player of the tournament?
So I'll do for my breakthrough and standout for the whole tour. I think it's Gibson Park, great shout. Josh Van der Veer is super good, but you can't look no further than DuPont, really. He's the heartbeat and soul of that French side. And a one that maybe he was great. Obviously, there's Italy, and that I think that's a bit more obvious. I'm going to go one out there. He was there in the autumn, but I think Cameron Watkey's really stood out for me with Six Nations. The quality he has. I think that's the one that a bit of a shock. I know I'm going to go a bit more out there. I think he's so important to that pack now. For England, I'm going to go breakthrough player. I'm going to go Freddie Stewart. I think he did play really well, but he's gone up. That's another level from there. Because, South Africa was the big test, did really well. And then this Six Nations, I think he's just put on another level. Consistency. Every game he's played, he's been super consistent on the wing, fullback, whatever. I think and then my standout when compared Mario Toja, he's been phenomenal compared. He's been a lot of criticism, having loads of penalties. I think he's put on to a different level. I think he's been outstanding and being probably one of the best locks in the Six Nations.
Absolutely, I agree. Check out Freddie's channel. There's a link in the chat. Head over there and subscribe as well. I'm sure we'll have Freddie on the channel very, very soon. Freddie, appreciate you jumping on, mate. And yeah, at least you beat Italy, the Six Nations, something we can't say we managed to do. Take it easy, mate, and good to see you as always. There we go. Thank you very much, Freddie. Folks, if you do want to jump in, this is the last chance to do it. I know someone did jump in, but unfortunately they jumped out. But if you do want to jump in and have your thoughts, if you want to talk about Wayne Pivac, If you want to talk about Eddie Jones, as my camera decides to go funny, there we are. If you want to talk about anything that you want to talk about, this is your last chance. We're going to be here till about 9:30 tonight. So if you want to have anything on your say, then now is the time to jump in. It's completely, fully relaxed. Say what you want, keep it fairly respectful, and chat about rugby, and you're more than welcome to jump in. Let's then play the final clip then of the Italian chat that I did with Matteo. I asked him his thoughts and his analysis on what this will mean for Italian rugby moving forward. How can Italy build on this? This is what he had to say. Folks, if you are enjoying, by the way, and you're watching, not yet done, so please do like the stream and subscribe. And this is what he had to say on the situation, on how Italy can build on this victory against Wales. Take a listen.
So it may be a simple concept, but in the desert of Nevada that we are in, this is a pond of water. It's something we can hold on to and build on top of. These players lack the feeling of being in control of the game and taking it home. The ball becomes slippery and it is super hot. It's like they can't even touch it at some point of the game because it's really they really have the pressure from the whole movement asking them to take one home. And this, I think, this will prove to these players that despite the young age, the lack of experience, they are worthy of being there. They can contest a game. They can take it home occasionally. And they, in general, they are not, they're not phonies. They're not imposters. They deserve to be there. They deserve to play these games. And they should build on this particular feeling, I would say, more than anything else. They should build on this feeling. They should feel that they can do it again. This is the feeling that's been lacking for the last 5, 6, 7 years. It's been, I think, 7 years. Because at some point, when whatever you try, you don't win, you really start feeling like, what's the point in even trying? So yeah, that's it for me. Then again, from the more maybe technical side, Italy could build on this in terms of knowing what your strength is. A very important Italian rugby commentator and journalist, Vittorio Munari, he said in a podcast something that we all think, which is that once our strength was the scrum. We knew that we had Castro there. We knew that we had champions in the front row and in the second row, and it was somewhat feared by the other teams. It was our strength point, and we could build on top of that. Maybe not a flashy game, but definitely we could win 1 or 2, sometimes 2 games. And in general, we were not a disappointment to anybody in that sense. While in the last years, we did not have a strength point. The scrum was absolute shite. The line out never clicked. The kicking game was non-existent. The scrum half has been always a problem and still is to some extent. While now we have 3, and in the future 4, players that can actually kick the ball very well. We have Garbisi, we have Marin, we have Padovani, but soon we will also have Lorenzo Pani and Giovanni Sante, who has been rumored to be acquired by Montpellier for next year already. So it's 4 or 5 players at 10, 12 and 15 who can kick really well. And if we are able to build on top of this, we could develop our own brand of rugby that gives us an edge against opponents when something else is missing. So this is more of a technical opinion on the matter.
So there you go. Those are the thoughts of Matteo. I have dropped a link to Leone Fiori, a Italian rugby blog and podcast. It's in the chat somewhere. Here it is. So head over there. You can translate the page into English and you can read what they've done. They've done some really great pieces, and they chat all Italian rugby, and they're very, very knowledgeable on it as well. To finish off then, I don't think anyone else is going to jump in, but if you want to, you got about 5 minutes, so do just jump in by the link I've dropped in the chat throughout the course of the stream. Thank you to everyone who has helped tonight. It's massively appreciated. This first fan forum we've done. I think we're going to do one again for the end of the URC season. That's probably when we'll do the next one, and then we'll do one for the summer tours. Just give you guys a chance to give your opinions. As a Welshman, first of all, pretty disappointing campaign from my perspective. Canacquainen as often as I can. Very much depends if there's some big games, maybe after some European games. Definitely at the end of the URC, I'd like some representative of each of the clubs to get on, but we can chat about that a little bit later on. But yeah, thank you for jumping on as well, by the way. But yeah, from a Welsh perspective, really disappointing campaign. The Ireland game was woeful, really, really bad. But yeah, we won't talk too much on it, to be honest. And then the Scotland game, I think we had a period of 10 minutes where we looked pretty good in that game against England. We were 17-0 down, we had nothing to lose, so we decided to start playing. Against France, we defended very, very well, but it offered nothing going forward. And then against Italy, my word, I think that was the worst of the bunch. Just no game plan, no clear directive on the way we wanted to play. And I think that has been a really, really big issue for us. And I think it's something that we are going to have to look at going forward. In terms of the head coach, first thing to say is Pivac isn't going anywhere. I don't think, I don't get that feeling that he's going to get sacked. I do think there's a huge problem within Wales around coaching, really. I mean, Byron Hayward was the defence coach when Pivac got the job in the first place. He was sacked as the defence coach of Wales, and then he takes over as the under-20. So it's almost saying, do you know what, you're not quite good enough for this level, but you'll do for the future crop of Welsh rugby, which to me is just stupid, really. And yeah, really, really not happy with that. I don't see Pivac going. I think he should go. Well, it's a difficult one because we're so close to the World Cup. If this was last year, I think you say experiment hasn't worked. We've given it 2 years. It's not worked. We'll scrap it and we'll try something different. The other issue is who's available on the market. Let's move on to Ireland really, really quickly then. Porter, as you said, Stephen Jones. I mean, what is he doing? What is he doing? Because I've not seen anything in attack. And that's the big thing. Before I move on to Ireland quickly, the word identity is the one that I worry about with this Irish team. With this Welsh team, we have no identity. You don't know how we're going to play. The attack looks awful. The defence on the whole shows signs of what it's known to do, but that's really pulling away from the Gatland era. And the selections, there are players like Ellis Jenkins, who featured in the first game, then was dropped, and we haven't seen him since. Tane Basham, who started really, really well, dropped, and we haven't seen him since. Kieran Hardy's been on the bench every single game, and then all of a sudden Gareth Davies gets a start ahead of him. I don't understand that one. McNichol hadn't been involved in the squad at all, really, and then gets a start. Very odd decisions. From an Irish then, heading over to Ireland, I think it's been a pretty good campaign for them. They battered Wales in the first game. Then they had, oh gosh, let me try and remember this and have a quick look at Ireland. Yeah, had France in the second game. Obviously, France blew them away in the first half, but in the second half, Ireland came back in that one. Then they had the Italians, which was a really weird game. And although they won by 57 points to 6, it was a little bit clunky. And then the England game was the slight concern for you if you are Irish, is that despite going ahead, and having that extra man, seem to think, right, we've got to score a try straight away. We've got to throw the ball about. We've got to do that. We've got to do that constantly, when actually you don't need to do that. Just be patient, go through the phases, and maybe that experience in these huge games. And maybe, I know it's something I mentioned on the watch on yesterday, and it got to a few people, was this quarter-final thing in World Cups for Ireland. It's something that they've struggled with. It's a fact. Do I think they'll struggle in the next World Cup? They've got a tough pool against, they've got Scotland and they've got South Africa in there. I want to say that's who they've got in their pool, along with Spain, who are a really good emerging nation who just qualified. So I do think that Ireland are going to have to not improve massively, because I do think they've improved a lot. And I think what Andy Fowler's done really well is he's taken what Joe Schmidt has done so effectively and added to that with what Fowler's done. That's what Pivac hasn't done with Wales. He hasn't continued what Gatland had done so successful with Wales, which was fitness, work ethic, and also just having a very clear game plan. It's not pretty to watch, but it works. It gives you success. Pivac tried to change the whole thing, realised that's not going to work, and now I think he's trying to catch up with what is going on. But I think Ireland have done that very well, building on that success. Scotland, I think, has been a really disappointing campaign for them. I think you could hear in Dan's voice throughout the course of the time we chatted with him how disappointing a campaign it has been for Scotland. I thought they were woeful against Ireland. I thought they were awful, if I'm being totally honest. And I think they were lucky that the scoreline wasn't bigger, to be honest. Just that Ireland, I don't think, fully clicked in that game. And I think there's massive issues behind the scenes for them with those 6 players going away and, drinking and not coming back in team protocol. There's nothing wrong with drinking. It's the team protocol that you've broken. Yet some of them are allowed to play, some of them aren't. And there seems to be this mentality problem at Scotland. I don't think they've actually played all that well for the last 6 months in the autumn. I don't think they played particularly well. They got a scrappy win against Japan. They beat Australia, a team in transition, were beaten comfortably by South Africa. And they did beat Tonga as well, but Tonga had their 3rd team out in that one. Heading over to England, as Freddie said, and rightly pointed out, it's been a disappointing campaign for them as well. I think the table flatters them quite a bit, actually. I think a 3rd place finish is very fortuitous. Offered very little in attack, and Marcus Smith hasn't clicked. And I do think that the centre is a big issue for them. But they got some important wins. They beat Wales. They managed to hold on to that victory. In the game yesterday against France, there was a period for 10, 15 minutes where they looked like they could cause an upset in that one. And then against Ireland, they rallied together. They played the perfect game plan. They frustrated the Irish. Their scrum was extremely dominant. They picked and goed well. They competed at the breakdown well. And as Freddie said, I think Freddie Stewart and Matt Itoje have been excellent players for them. For Italy, they've got to win. That was the big thing for them. Nobody expected before the Six Nations that they would get a single win. And, as a Welshman, I have to congratulate them. They're the better team. And as you heard from Matteo, from Leone Fiore, they had joy of getting that win finally and the potential being able to build upon that. And the success the likes of Benetton have had in the URC and the under-20s team now is just a massive thing. Having youngsters like Capuzzo coming through, Garbisi at 10. The future looks pretty bright for Italy, but it's whether they can back that up now. I'm not sure what they're doing in the summer. Let me see if I can find out, actually. Italy Rugby Summer Tour 2022. Okay. So Italy are going to be taking on So Italy are going to be taking on Argentina and the USA, which they should be beating the USA, and then they need to be looking to try and beat Argentina. That'd be a hell of a win if they could get that. That'd be a real statement for them. So I think they're building in the right direction. Do I think next season they're going to get 2-3 wins? No, I don't, to be honest. And I think, I still think that it's a long road ahead for them, but getting this win is something off their back, and winning in Cardiff for the first time, winning against Wales for the first time since 2007 is a massive thing for them. And then finishing off then with France, the champions. France were fantastic, the Six Nations. Against Italy, a little bit clunky, a little bit rusty, but got the win there. Then they played against, let me remind myself, who they played against. In the second round, they played against Ireland. First half were fantastic, lost their way in the second half, but managed to see it out. They then, of course, took on Scotland, and I think that was probably their best performance of the campaign. I really think they were brilliant against Scotland. Thought they were fantastic. They just were incredible. I thought Dupont was unreal in that game. They then played against Wales, and that was when I really thought they were going to win the Grand Slam when they won that game, because despite not being able to play the free-flowing rugby that they wanted to, they still found a way to win the game, to get the try, and to keep in the game. And really, one of the things that a lot of teams have done against Wales, which France did very well, was give the ball to Wales. Let Wales have the ball, because they can't score tries off it. They can't do it. But France were incredible. Their front five especially, just so physical, so powerful. Dante in the centre really stepped up in Vakatawa's absence. Villiers on the wing stepped up. Jaminet stepped up as a goal kicker. Dupont and Ntamak obviously were brilliant. I thought Ntamak had a really quiet Six Nations, if I'm being totally honest. But Dupont was the best player in the world right now, absolutely. And they're deserving to be captain of this Grand Slam winning team. And I did back France at the start. I thought they would win the Six Nations. I didn't think there'd be a Grand Slam, but I did back them to win the Six Nations. And I did think they would get it done. So on the whole, I think it's been an enjoyable Six Nations with everything going on in the world. Maybe that's exactly what we needed, just as a little bit of a break from everything going on in the world. I think the big thing to say is that the gap between France and Ireland and the rest is big, really big. I think England are slightly ahead of Scotland and Wales, and then I still believe Italy are below them, despite Italy beating Wales. So I do think the gap between those teams is bigger. I think it's going to be really interesting this summer to see how the Northern Hemisphere's teams get on against these Southern Hemisphere sides. I mean, we've seen already in the URC with the teams playing in South Africa how much they've struggled with the conditions there and everything else. So it's been a really enjoyable Six Nations. I really enjoy it, and I massively appreciate all the support you've shown on the channel over the course of the Six Nations. Let's quickly follow up then by finishing on your thoughts. Glad you've enjoyed, Greg, and would love to get you on at the end of the season to get your thoughts on Ulster and the rest. Porter, glad you've enjoyed. Absolutely would love to have you on at the end. Gareth, glad you've enjoyed it as well. Let's have a look. What else have we got here? The 30-man law was crap, yeah, against Italy, wasn't it? That was a difficult one. But I thought Italy were okay in that, actually. I just thought Ireland just tried to force it. That's one thing you'd say about Ireland, this Six Nations, is that they just need to go through the phases, be patient, understand that they had the extra man in those games, and know that the speed of ball that they can get, which we see at the provinces week in, week out, that DNA just runs through the core of Irish rugby, something that you can't say about Welsh rugby. And even yet, with 13, they were not ashamed and spun analysis. Well, we try. I'm not always right, but we try. But I'm going to leave it there. I really do appreciate you contributing in the chat or coming on. Thank you to all the guests who came on at such short notice and gave their thoughts on their team. Massively appreciated for all of them. No, you were brilliant. Don't worry. You're absolutely fantastic. That's what it's about. It's just about rugby fans giving their opinion and saying what they think. And it's always good to hear others' opinions, because although I watch a lot of rugby, I try and watch as much URC as I can and understand the game as much as I can. But I don't watch Munster week in, week out. I don't watch Glasgow week in, week out. You know, I watch Ospreys week in, week out and try and keep an eye on the Welsh side as much as possible. But it's good to get other people's opinions and to understand. Like someone like Stephen Somerville, who came on today, he's an Ulster season ticket holder. So he watches them week in, week out. He knows what they're like, keeps an eye out on the Irish sides as well. So he knows what he's talking about. So it's good to get other people's opinions throughout the course of tonight and throughout the course of the channel's wash hands on Wales. Is that on Wayne Pivac? Yeah, there we go. But I'm going to leave it there. There won't be any videos till later in the week, probably a URC preview, and there'll be watch-longs next weekend for the URC as the focus will turn back to that now with the end of the Six Nations. I got a few uni deadlines to get working on tomorrow, so we'll be doing that. But massively appreciate your support of the Six Nations and with the channel. Channel's massively grown over the course of the competition and really do appreciate it. As I said before, if you've enjoyed, hit the like button, subscribe, follow my socials, all linked down below, and I will catch you very soon here on BS Rugby. My throat is going, absolutely is going. Take it easy, folks. Thank you very much for watching and enjoy the rest of your evening.